Now, we don't want to blow your minds or anything, but Bill Gates is actually not an epidemiologist, a physician, a scientist. He sells crappy software for a living. You would never know that because during Corona, he was our media's expert on lockdowns and vaccines. It turns out he was heavily invested in vaccines. Who knew? But today, the unthinkable happened. Bill Gates announced on Twitter, and we're quoting, "I've tested positive for COVID. I'm experiencing mild symptoms." Whoa, how'd that happen, Mr. Vaccine Guy? But there is good news. Turns out that Bill Gates' COVID infection is proof that vaccines are actually super, super effective. And we're quoting again, "I'm fortunate to be vaccinated and boosted," Gates wrote. Jason Rantz is a radio show host in Seattle. He's been looking into Bill Gates. He joins us tonight. Hey, Jason.
Hey, so Bill Gates is actually hawking his new book. It's called How to Prevent the Next Pandemic, something he doesn't actually know very much about. But given how many cases we've had in this country, he might be hoping a side effect of COVID is memory loss, because he has been proven wrong on almost everything he's recommended, which is obviously not the best way to sell this book, and is probably why he's rewriting history. So, for example, speaking at an event last week, this is what he said.
At that point, we didn't really understand the fatality rate. We didn't understand that it's a fairly low fatality rate and that it's a disease mainly of the elderly, kind of like flu is, although a bit different than that.
So he was talking about what he knew about COVID back in February 2020. And in fairness, it wasn't that much. But we had data a month later that showed for the vast majority of people under 65, COVID was more like the flu, and older folks were the ones who were being hospitalized at such high rates. And yet Bill Gates was pushing for a full national lockdown after the data came in. He said this.
So we're entering into a tough period that if we do it right, we'll only have to do it once for 6 to 10 weeks. But we have to do it. It has to be the whole country.
And as more data was coming in throughout the year, he kept promoting economic shutdowns and other policies that frankly never worked. So, for example, he pushed testing to prevent COVID spread, including the expensive at-home tests. Now, obviously, that didn't actually stop the spread, and it also didn't stop him and George Soros from joining a consortium to buy an at-home testing company. He pushed overreaching contact tracing programs, including a centralized database that would track people who had COVID. Contact tracing as a strategy was a total failure here. When then Governor Andrew Cuomo pushed for closing schools, he ended up partnering with the Gates Foundation to reimagine education. But anything that kept students out of the classroom was actually really detrimental. And then, of course, he called masks magical. But the cloth masks that everyone were wearing at the time, they didn't stop the spread. 2 months ago, he said we should be mimicking Australia to stop the pandemic. They banned outdoor exercise and even walking your dog outside. Bill Gates was more prescient about the Zune than he was about treating COVID. And yet now he's revising history and he's taking stances like, hey, Americans should be a little bit more comfortable giving up their freedoms. And I think that that's dangerous if we continue to listen to him.
Crime of the century, anyone? Someone should do a movie about this. In the meantime, Jason Rantz, we're grateful for your report. Thank you.